Is now the right time to be doing options? You know, markets change, particularly the housing market. Times of boom and bust cycle regularly. I've traded through 2 complete cycles now. Periods of sustained and rapid growth result in a superheated situation where prices are unstable. When you know that if you don't make an offer at the time of viewing a property that you'll lose that property, when prices increase daily by thousands of pounds, when banks and mortgage companies are throwing money at you, you know it can't last. A crash is inevitable. Now that's always followed by a period of lacklustre performance or even stagnation, before slowly the confidence in the economy starts to return and prices gradually begin to creep upwards, gaining momentum increasingly until again there occurs a crash in a time of reconsolidation. In this last recession, banks lost huge amounts of money, and new very stringent lending criteria were put in place, making it next to impossible to secure a mortgage unless you could show you didn't need one. With belt tightening across the country, the inevitable job losses saw many people, most of whom had bought in the mid-2000s at the height of the boom, unable to meet their mortgage. And the devaluation in property prices meant they just could not sell, leaving the banks with little option but to repossess. QE, that's quantitative easing, and QE2, where the government printed money and pumped it into the economy, along with interest rates at historic lows of just 0.5%, was intended to kickstart the economy. Millions of pounds were given to the banks with the idea that the banks would start to lend and help the economic recovery. It didn't happen. The banks held on to the money and the recovery stumbled along. So where do we go from here? Property prices are rising, and it would seem to be the ideal time for the investor to jump in and start buying property, right? Well, maybe, and maybe not. We are presently in the heating up period. We have one of the strongest economies in Europe. There are more and more mortgage products becoming available. The banks are lending and property prices are rising quickly. Investment from abroad, coupled with massive immigration and a huge housing deficit, means inevitably that the heating up will result in a superheated economy, and that means the cycle will repeat and we'll have another crash. Well, don't worry about it, just be prepared for it. I made more money in the last 2 recessions that I traded through than I ever did in the boom times. But what about the UK? Well, the pound is strong. We still have our AAA rating. The world still sees the UK as a safe haven for investment, so everything should turn out okay, shouldn't it? Well, maybe, and maybe not. You see, the lack of lending by the banks during the recession meant that many British businesses were unable to invest in their future, leaving them unable to be competitive now that the economy is recovering. The strong pound makes exports expensive and businesses and the economy suffer. The Bank of England has kept the bank base rate low at just 0.5% in an effort to stimulate the economy. But the banks haven't passed on those rates in the form of lower mortgage rates. The cost of living is also rising at a far greater rate than many predicted. Now, the usual method of controlling a high cost of living is to raise the bank rate. But the Bank of England continues to hold the rate at an artificially low level. There are predictions that it could stay low for another couple of years or so. Eventually, though, it's going to have to go up, and it might just snap up to a high level over a short period of time to make up for the years when it was too low. You can bet the banks will raise their mortgage rates as well, and that could well put many buy-to-let investors into negative yield, and many more private homeowners will not be able to manage the extra strain on their finances. Higher interest rates means even less borrowing. Many businesses who are struggling now will be unable to service their debt, with more inevitable job losses. So we may well have the scenario where we have a country whose export businesses are unable to compete in the world market, severely affecting our trade balance. Another recession starts to seem very likely. In fact, in view of China's problems and its recent suspending of trading on its stock market, Warren Buffett, who knows a thing or two, suggests that another world recession is looming. Next time, however, things could be far, far worse. Quantitative easing didn't end the recession the first time around or the last time around, and it won't the next time, because there just isn't enough money to pump into the economy. Bringing the bank rates down won't help either. We'll be too far gone for that to be effective. The current problems for the property market will intensify enormously. Sales will drop even lower, repossessions will rise. There'll be a huge pool of unsellable properties. A pretty black outlook. So should we heed this advice? Should we be consolidating our assets, maybe selling our less profitable properties? Maybe buying gold and waiting until things improve before we invest in property again? Well, yes and no. Great Britain's property market is unique in that the strict controls on building on green zones means that there are simply not enough houses to supply demand. And that's a demand which has risen astronomically over the last 10 years, due in large part to the disastrous immigration policies. Our builders aren't even coming close to meeting government targets. Rental demand is at its highest, with not enough homes available to satisfy that demand. Supply and demand dictates that renting out properties is a very good business to be in. The problem is that the economy means that we can't buy enough properties to take advantage of the situation. And anyway, would we really want to invest our capital right now? The answer, of course, is lease options. That huge pool of unsellable properties is an Aladdin's cave for us. We can take on as many properties as we can manage without having to buy them. Fortunes can be made in the next recession, but you have to be ready. The present and continuing economic situation means a huge number of properties becoming available that are taking a long time to sell are ours for the taking. Controlling a property with a lease option means that we can take advantage of the high rental demand without exposing our capital to risk. We can structure the option over a long enough period to be pretty sure that we can make a healthy profit at the back end too. So being able to capitalise on a recession with little or even zero exposure and risk while making increasingly higher profits is obviously a smart way to invest. Where do we find these deals? Check out in the next module, I'll tell you.